I'm recording this video right now about hypnosis inhibiting my ability to articulate, inhibiting my ability to speak, repressing my memory, and inhibiting my ability to write. So, sorry about that. The hypnosis has inhibited my ability to speak and repress my memory to the extent I began writing, since it would be too noticeable that I was hypnotized to inhibit my ability to read. A method I discovered for this was to record myself writing, because there would be evidence, or if there were any witnesses around. I have overwhelming evidence here of hypnosis inhibiting my handwriting, which I will elaborate in another video. I was also hypnotized not to drink water unless I would notice I wasn't drinking enough water, unless someone else would notice I wasn't drinking enough water, or unless they would get caught for it. They inhibited my ability to speak with similar conditions to conceal the fact hypnosis was inhibiting my ability to speak and repressing my memory. I was given specific post-hypnotic suggestions, which is the technical terminology for hypnotic commands that were designated to prevent the post-hypnotic suggestions from being noticed by other people, and to make the post-hypnotic suggestions less noticeable by using post-hypnotic suggestions to intentionally exhibit a more noticeable behavior as a distraction. For example, instead of completely inhibiting speech like in a stage hypnosis show, they only partially inhibited my ability to speak because it would be too noticeable. Since they were only able to partially inhibit my ability to speak, they hypnotized me to feel like speaking was extremely physically strenuous, difficult, and forced. You probably already noticed that in the video. I was hypnotized to conceal the presentation of post-hypnotic suggestions with an audible elicitation of anger, which was a method used to gaslight me and conceal evidence of sanity and competency. The post-hypnotic suggestions are discernible specifically in body language, speech, and cognitive impairment. I'm going to go over those here in just a moment. I was hypnotized to elicit a large variety of 5 to 15 different post-hypnotic suggestions, either simultaneously or in a successive order, one after another, as a method of gaslighting me and instilling the impression that I was insane or incompetent. The post-hypnotic suggestions would be unnoticeable and insignificant individually, but collectively had an extremely profound and significant effect. The elicitation in succession of the post-hypnotic suggestions would cause it to be less noticeable, and if I explained 3 or 4 post-hypnotic suggestions in less than a minute, there would still be another 4 or 5 post-hypnotic suggestions that would go unnoticed. The succession was also intended to progressively antagonize me in a manner to subtly arouse emotions. Sorry about that. So, under body language, there is the example of waving my hand in front of the camera, first of all, and then strained speaking and remembering, exaggeration of emotional responses, abnormal facial expressions, abnormal or exaggerated heavy breathing, eliciting anger when resisting post-hypnotic suggestions, conceal post-hypnotic suggestions, muscle tension when resisting post-hypnotic suggestions, back pain that increased the more I resisted post-hypnotic suggestions, speech patterns, slowed and delayed speech, stuttering, speech pattern interruption phrases. So these included yeah, you know, and right. And these were intended to conceal speech inhibition and create a false impression of incompetence, also break up my speech patterns. So, incomplete sentences and things like that. Repetitive, vague, indirect, and incomplete speech patterns conceal inhibited speech and articulation, inhibiting comprehension and understanding by omitting essential context and incomplete, resulting in incomplete and ineffective communication to consume excessive amounts of time. That was an example where I was stuttering right now of the hypnosis being used to abuse me profoundly. Please help me. Inhibition of vocabulary and articulation. Cognition. So, dizziness, inhibited cognition, eliciting a state of confusion, brief repression of memory, replicated symptoms of sleep deprivation without sleep deprivation. And then, let's see. When I was hypnotized, I was told that the post-hypnotic suggestions were like hypnotic laws that they made for me, and I was told that, wow, okay, that's why I'm stumbling over my words so much, is the hypnosis. When I was hypnotized, I was told that the post-hypnotic suggestions were like hypnotic laws that they made for me, and I was told that resisting those post-hypnotic suggestions were like breaking the laws they made for me. I was hypnotized to feel like breaking the hypnotic law was very strenuous, forceful, and difficult, to feel like that the more I tried to break the hypnotic laws, that the more strenuous, forceful, and difficult it felt, and to feel very angry after breaking the hypnotic law, to the extent I would be forced to make an audible elicitation of anger because people would be able to hear it and it would be more noticeable, so it would conceal any strain in my voice. That's what happened. From speech inhibition. I was also hypnotized to think that it meant that the people who hypnotized me were angry instead of myself, which was a method of decreasing resistance to the post-hypnotic suggestion by causing confusion, diffusing anger, and to distract attention, as well as instilling a false belief of progress in an attempt to make me stop by trying to make me feel like I made enough progress. Another reason I was hypnotized, to think that being hypnotized to feel angry meant the hypnotists that abused me with hypnosis were angry because I ruined something for them that they did to abuse me, in an attempt to decrease resistance to the post-hypnotic suggestion of feeling anger, because I would feel satisfaction from making the hypnotist that abused me feel angry, so then I would want to keep doing it, but I don't want to. They told me that they were going to abuse me so much that I wouldn't want to be myself anymore afterward, and that they were going to hypnotize me to let me act like I was someone else, and that they got that idea from the Billie Eilish song, I Don't Want to Be You Anymore. So I was hypnotized to imagine that I was acting like the hypnotist that abused me when I resisted post-hypnotic suggestions to prevent me from resisting the anger. They also told me to imagine someone playing with a toy in their hands, and that the toy was like a Rubik's Cube, and that if I broke that toy, to feel very angry because of what the toy meant. Operant conditioning was also frequently used as a form of punishment or negative reinforcement to deter specific behaviors like anything regarding politics, articulating my speech, writing to compensate for speech inhibition, to deter me from making videos, learning and collecting or disclosing evidence of any criminal activity that hypnosis were involved in, with methods such as dizziness, dysphoria, drowsiness, confusion, pain, nausea, and several unpleasant post-hypnotic suggestions. I was hypnotized to feel euphoria to promote initiating a different behavior than a behavior they attempted to deter with dysphoria unsuccessfully. To decrease resistance to post-hypnotic suggestions, to inhibit my ability to know when I am in danger by repressing my ability to feel fear, to inhibit my sense of urgency, to prevent me from finishing important tasks and projects within a reasonable amount of time, which is why I'm recording it on Facebook Live, and decrease resistance to hypnosis, inhibiting me and repressing my memory as much as I would tolerate it, to consume as much of my time as possible. Another method that was used to inhibit my ability to speak and communicate is called a pattern interrupt, which was used through post-hypnotic suggestion to interrupt thought patterns, behavior patterns, and speech patterns. In a therapeutic context, this would be used to induce hypnosis or interrupt negative patterns. The hypnosis is inhibiting me again. My ability to speak and communicate is inhibiting my ability to speak and communicate is called a pattern interrupt, which was used through post-hypnotic suggestion to interrupt thought patterns, behavior patterns, and speech patterns. In a therapeutic context, this would be used to induce hypnosis or interrupt negative patterns, although this was specifically used to interrupt productive patterns and positive patterns with distraction, which would prevent the completion of the patterns. The pattern interrupt technique interrupted me gathering, organizing, or disclosing evidence in any form with hypnotic cues to attract attention long enough so that the hypnosis could repress my memory before being able to finish, resulting in an incomplete and unorganized compilation of evidence. And attempts to disclose evidence with inhibited articulation and speech would be excessively repetitive, vague, indirect, and incomplete, resulting in the general public being incapable of understanding or comprehending the situation. One of the tendencies of the post-hypnotic suggestions was that the post-hypnotic suggestions were elicited in a format that would frequently utilize very specific and relevant metaphors that were typically used as a direct post-hypnotic suggestion and or used as a metaphor to cause confusion and distract attention in order to decrease resistance and enforce blind obedience to the post-hypnotic suggestions. The post-hypnotic suggestions were oftentimes commands in the form of an incomplete metaphor that initially wouldn't make sense at all, until after refusing or complying with a command, and punishment or reward of the behavior would be described in the form of missing context that was needed to complete and make sense of the metaphor. This is what like Hitler did, in regards to blind obedience towards authority. Sorry about that. The pattern was used to condition blind obedience to an incomplete metaphor that provided no reasoning or explanation, which is blind obedience, until after the metaphorical command was rejected or accepted. The blind obedience to post-hypnotic suggestions was necessary in order to successfully gaslight me after seeing the news article about Billie Eilish receiving death threats by forcing me to immediately respond on Facebook to the premeditated post-hypnotic suggestions and metaphors without knowing the reason for why. By forcing me to immediately respond on Facebook, I was unable to articulate the evidence in writing, so the hypnosis was used to inhibit articulation, inhibit speech, repress my memory, control body language, and elicit extremely abnormal emotional responses to disguise the post-hypnotic suggestions as insanity and incompetence. A specific metaphor in post-hypnotic suggestion that was used to inhibit cognition, learning, and memory involves being told that I was going to be taken to the laundromat. I was hypnotized to feel dizzy, disoriented, confused, dysphoria, nausea, drowsiness, to experience memory loss, and a variety of other unpleasant and inhibiting post-hypnotic suggestions. Whenever I was learning anything or doing anything that could help me reverse the effects of hypnosis or obtain and disclose evidence of me being abused with hypnosis. They hypnotized me to feel like my brain was spinning in a washing machine on the spin cycle, turning to mush when these post-hypnotic suggestions were cued or triggered, and they told me that they were doing that to me because they were, quote, brainwashing me. So, that is that. Thank you for watching the video. I am going to go ahead and get started here. There's a lot of evidence that I have in handwriting and drawings that I'm going to go ahead and present. This video is going to be good enough, at least for the moment. I'm glad I have it on my Facebook already, and I'm going to upload the video on YouTube as well. So again, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.